the Central Mississippi Planning and Development District representatives to discuss this. We hired the Central Mississippi Planning and Development District to do our redistricting for this coming year. And so, with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce, and he is going to talk about numbers and lines and about the process. So, Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate y'all having us here. If anybody will comment while I'm speaking to that, I'm going to try doing it without the microphone so I can address the audience here. I'm Bruce Reynolds with Central Mississippi Planning and Development District. We've been hired by the county to assist in their redistricting effort. And today, this is a public hearing to inform you guys of the process, how we got to here, and where we're going from here also. So, let me just kind of give you a brief history of what's going on. Every 10 years, as you well know, the census is taken, and this is done in April, this past year, April 2010. And December, some information, census information came out in regard to statewide redistricting, geography-wise, so we can kind of start looking at making sure the geography that the census had was correct. And then about 3 weeks ago, not even 3 weeks ago, the what's called public law data, which is used for redistricting, came out from the census. So a little early, because Mississippi is one of 5 states that has elections in November of this year. So the Census Department actually released the information to us and 4 other states a little bit early in order for redistricting to take place. And there's going to be some confusion, and that's okay, between statewide redistricting and county redistricting. Today we're here to talk about redistricting of Madison County, and that is a little bit different than the state. Well, it's a lot different from the state, geography-wise, as well as some of the deadlines are different. But just to give you some information on, and we're going to be passing out some information here to show you the existing lines. But just to give you kind of a heads up on what happened from year 2000 to 2010 in Madison County, is the county grew from 74,674 to 95,203. And each of the supervisory districts, we put the lines out there, each of the supervisory districts had a population increase. None of them declines. That's a good thing. It shows that, you know, that Madison County is bucking the trend and is continuing to grow. And just to go through very quickly, and what I have right here, this is just the existing supervisory district lines broken out by the 5 districts and using the census information. And what we're handing out will also have this same information, so you can look at it in your hand as well as this when it comes around. But bottom line, just to give you some information on what happened between 2000 and 2010, is District 1 increased by about 2,800 votes, which is almost 20%. District 2 increased by about 4,000 votes, which is about a 25% increase. District 3 increased by 7,200 people, about 46% increase. District 4 increased by 6,000, which is about 42% increase. And District 5 increased by about 500 votes, which is about a 3.23% increase. So again, each of the districts in the county grew for a net population increase from 74,000 to 95,000. With that said, if each of them had grown at the exact same percentage, we wouldn't need to go through the redistricting process. But what causes redistricting to happen is that every 10 years when the census comes out, we lay the existing lines on the map, put the numbers in there, and since there are 5 districts, each district you have as close to 20% of the total population as possible. Getting a little technical here, but you know the process does get just a little bit technical. So going back, you know, we now have 95,200 something people. The ideal population per district, if we could get it with no variation and divide it by 5, would be 19,041 persons per supervisory district in the county. Now, what we have done is put this up here on the map, and I think it's the second page of the handout that we gave you. What this shows is the variation from that ideal, thus the need to redistrict. The total variation was 38.21%, which means that we do need to get closer to that 19,041 ideal population. And going through each of the districts to show you very quickly how the districts vary. District 1, it needs 1,691 people. District 2 has 268 too many. District 3 has 3,600 too many. District 4, 1,300 too many. And District 5, which is the largest district, grew less than the rest of them, so it actually needs to pick up about 15,000, it needs to pick up about 3,500 people there. With that said, we take the total, this is where it gets just a little bit complicated, bear with us. We're talking about variance, and that's variance of the population from that ideal of 19,041. And bottom line is we're at the point where we have to do that right now. And what we want to do is let you know what the existing population is by district. And also in this map, we have white total age voter population, we have black total age voter population, and other total age voter age population there. So we have to take all this into account when we go through the process of getting it as close to that 19,041 population as possible. I will show you on the map also. This is a visual for me. It helps me out on that second page. A little bar graph. If you look at 20%, that's that ideal population, and it shows who's above it and who's below it. And if you're below it, you need to come up. If you're above it, you need to come down. If you're below it, you need to come up a little bit. So, with that said, what we will be doing is working with the board to come up with an ideal population, try to change things as little as possible, and come up with a redistricting plan that will pass muster. Now, a couple of situations that we have here is a March 1st deadline. And so, can we get this plan redistricted and ready for the March 1st deadline? Physically, I'm sure a plan could be gotten done that quickly, but you have something else you have to consider, this Department of Justice. Mississippi is one of a number of states that has to have any voting change pre-cleared by the Department of Justice. In order for that to happen, once the public input is made, the board comes up with a final redistricting plan or final districting plan at that point, then the attorney has to work, put a package together that ends up being like this, sends it to the Department of Justice in Washington. DOJ then has at least 60 days to clear this document. And most times they will wait till, the 58th, 59th day and request some information, which gives them an additional 60 days. So once it's submitted to the Department of Justice, Justice has up to 120 days to what they call pre-clear, but it's really to approve this. And until it is approved by the Department of Justice, then it cannot pass muster. So we have a couple of different deadlines, state deadline and a federal review period that goes in with that. With that said, what we're here today is to inform you of how we got to where we were to where we are right now. We are out of compliance, as are most of the counties that we're working with too. The great thing in Madison County is that each of the districts have grown. I think that's good. And now what we need to do is get those 5 districts, within the range that the Department of Justice will say is okay to that ideal population. One of the things that's not required by the Department of Justice, or it's required actually by the state of Mississippi, but is to hold public hearings. We felt like that, it is a good and wise thing to do that. thus you guys are here today. And, you know, with the explanation and all that said, I will defer to the board on how you want to handle the public hearing or any questions. And how about before I defer, any questions that you have on the technical aspect, the census, how we got here, and where we're going? Can I field any questions on that?
Tell you what, Bruce, what we'd like to do is, if there are any questions, I would ask that any person that'd like to speak, just come to the podium, state your name for the record, and you know, ask your question, and we will, you know, Bruce needs to answer, or one of the board members, or Eric, our board attorney, Lee Westbrook, I see she is back here, she's our circuit clerk. If y'all have any questions, we are, you know, this whole process, we're just starting this process and drawing these lines, and so, but if there are any questions, just come to the podium and state your name for the record and ask your question, and we'll try to answer.
I'll mention one other thing very briefly is that this is what we've done. We've laid the existing boundaries on the census to see what we have, and we've not gone beyond that. So that's, you know, we've not drawn any lines at this point. You know, someone asked, are these the new lines? No, they're not the new lines. This is just the most recently approved boundaries for the 5 districts.
Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing?
My name is Julia Hodges, and I am from District 2. And my biggest concern about how this is going to be laid out, and I think quite a few of us in this room have this concern, is that all of the supervisors are not on this committee. And I believe it's just Tim and Carl. And I think, personally, that all the supervisors should be on this committee. Both of my aunts live at St. Catherine's Village. And they're concerned that their voice is not on this committee, and that's D.I. Smith. And so I ask that you reconsider having all supervisors. Everybody in this county needs a voice on this committee. It's too important not to leave these people on. It's just much, much too important. And I ask that you reconsider and you put those 3 gentlemen, Paul Griffin, John Bell, and D.I. Smith, on this committee to represent us all.
Let me get this. Eric, would you, I'm going to ask you to answer this because there's a reason behind the committee, and there's a reason that all the supervisors can't be on it at one time. But Eric, address the question.
Yeah, this is going to be, I'm going to try and give you an overview of how that came about and where we anticipate going and what options the board has here today. The first thing is, from my perspective, I think everybody wants one election. We don't want to have an election and then have another special election and all the cost and issues that go along with that. I think it's better from a policy standpoint. I think most people can agree that you want the certainty of one election. There's 2 basic tracks that we can take from a legal perspective on how to reach that goal. One is what we've been traveling under, I think, in our thinking, is that we run on the old lines as they exist on that map right over there. And while we do that, because of the deadlines that Bruce talked about and the difficulty of meeting those, and then put the board in the best possible position to not have to have another election. And one thing that's fueling this is the numbers are higher, the variances are higher than we originally thought. And when you look at the case law, when counties have done this and redrawn the lines after the election, essentially, for the next election, which is going to be 4 years down the road, there have been challenges to that on the one man, one vote doctrine. There's been some cases in Mississippi Judge Pickering has looked at 20 years ago or 18 years ago, and he set out some basic principles of what a board ought to do under these circumstances to avoid having to have a special election. One of those things is to form a biracial committee to shepherd the process. The committee, however, does not make any substantive decisions, and I think that's an important point. Every substantive decision from a legal standpoint is going to be made by all the supervisors here in meetings, in open meetings. The purpose, in my mind, of the committee is simply, one, to check one of those boxes that Judge Pickering put down as a reason you don't have to have a special election. And two, to have them just shepherd the process. I mean, you know, committees are a strange thing. You can have one that's too small, you can have one that's too big, and coordinating schedules and all that. But the point is that committee will not be making any substantive decisions whatsoever. It's just going to be, we talked about in the meeting last week, exactly that. And the minutes from that meeting are going to be available to the public. We can post them on the website if people would like to see that. That's the origin of this committee. We wanted to have Lee Westbrook on there in particular because a big issue is split precincts. It doubles and triples her work every election cycle when we have split precincts. So she's got to bring that technical knowledge to it to try and avoid that. And that's some of the nitty-gritty stuff that I don't want to do it. I mean, I'm on the committee, but that's really going to be a Lee Westbrook kind of issue.
Are citizens allowed to be on this committee?
Well, we've appointed the 5-person committee. We've invited Spence Blackguard to come to the meetings. And, you know, that's an interesting question because everything that's going to happen in these meetings to shepherd this process along and just move it along is going to be discussed, you know, at the next meeting. And that's the purpose of it, is to have a coherent strategy throughout the process and to keep the public informed. That's how we got to where we are.
And the gentleman that was talking about the maps, is this happening all over the state? Are there only, if each county has 5 supervisors, are these supervisors in all these states allowed to be on these committees, or is it just Madison? Is this only 2 people here?
There's different strategies that are employed, and if however many counties are going to have to redistrict, you're going to find a different strategy. You know, there's probably with CMPDD involved with several counties, you're going to see probably 5 counties. You're going to see a similar strategy across the board with them. But different counties are doing different things. Hancock County had a major population shift as a result of Hurricane Katrina. Their numbers are very similar to ours. And this is another tract, another legal tract that can be taken. What they did is they filed a lawsuit in order to get the deadlines pushed back, the qualifying deadlines, just for supervisors, not anybody else, just for supervisors, get the deadline pushed back to June 1st so that they can try to thread the needle in that compressed time period and redraw the lines and run on new lines. That's one thing, that's one option this board has, is to consider doing that. We could do that, and we could do it on an emergency basis and file it in federal court. DeSoto County is taking a different track. They are lobbying the legislature for legislation that will allow them to do the same thing Hancock County is asking to do. And that's the issue that we have, and that's the legal issue that I've been grappling with the whole time, because do we go out there and get in front and try and do that, or do we do all the things that Judge Pickering said to do and hope for the best? And there is no necessarily right answer. We do have a one-man, one-vote problem, and what a court would construe that to be if somebody challenged it from the outside, I don't know. I can't tell you with certainty because the numbers are a little bit bigger than the cases that Judge Pickering dealt with and other courts have dealt with. So I can't sit here and say, okay, we're just going to go run on these lines and we're going to be fine. I can't tell you that. So something for this board to consider is whether they want to file an emergency injunction, get the deadlines moved back to June 1st, and try to thread the needle like Hancock County is doing.
Because March 1st is right around the corner.
Oh,
It
there's
doesn't
no-
seem like it's enough time to do anything properly.
No, there's no question about it.
Set it properly.
It's well, we can't do it under the current law. We can't. We have to get a court order in order to change the law as it stands. If we wanted to redraw the lines and run under new lines in the fall. And even that would be ambitious in order to attempt.
I think one of the questions was, why wasn't all the board members on it? Would not state law preclude more than 2 members?
Yeah, and that's...
He's speaking to the mic, please. We cannot hear. If y'all have them up there, please use.
Part of the consideration, to double back on your question about having all the supervisors on the committee, public law, as we know, if you have more than 3 supervisors together outside a board meeting, you violate the Open Meetings Act. There's an article in the paper today about that, about the fines being raised to $500 and that. So it's kind of tricky when you do these committees for whatever. I mean, we do it from time to time on various issues. Generally, you only see 2 supervisors on there because of the Open Meetings Act rule.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a question based on her question.
Go ahead.
Bruce, she asked you a question about the committees, and y'all indicated you're doing about 5 counties. Now, out of those 5 counties, how many are using committees as opposed to y'all working with the entire board of supervisors?
The information came out about 2.5 weeks ago, and we are just now meeting with, we haven't even met with all 5 of our counties yet. And as Eric said, different ones will do it differently. Right now, to answer your question, we have no committee set up. Wouldn't surprise me if we did, wouldn't surprise me if we did. It is, every county, has the right to do it however they wish to. But right now, this is our county that we have been this actively involved in.
Eric, I could understand Judge Pickering's concern about the diversity and makeup of the committee if you had a board that wasn't diverse. We're about as diverse as you can have it here in Madison County. We don't have to form up a committee to make something that we already got.
Well, the committee's not making anything. Again, they're not making any substantive decisions. All they're doing is shepherding the process and frankly keeping CMPDD accountable and making sure we stay on them to develop this data and get it done. Everything we discuss in there is going to be put down on paper in black and white and discussed at the next board meeting and open board meetings. It's just a tool in order to move the process along and satisfy one of the requirements that the federal courts have put on us if we decide not to redraw the district lines.
Eric, in that light, one of the things you mentioned was that one of our options was to that we could vote to join into other counties with an injunction to move the qualifying deadlines from March 1 to June 1. If this board were to do that, would there be any reason for us to have a committee that we have now in that regard? Because we're basically using the committee now to I guess dissuade any type of lawsuit if we run under the current lines that we have.
Right, it would obviate the need for having a committee because you wouldn't be worried about checking one of those boxes that Judge Pickering and other courts have put down.
Okay. Go ahead.
Bruce, in your opinion from CMPDD, is there an advantage or a disadvantage? I'm curious, I know other people are, just an opinion, to having a committee, a plus or a minus from y'all's standpoint?
Well, again, if you do get taken to court, as Mr. Hamlin pointed out, the Pickering checklist is something to check off on there, and that is a good thing to have. Much like your consideration of how you're going to go about redistricting. The things that you put on there are not required, but every time that you put something on there like trying not to change it, or change as little as possible, compactness and this sort of thing, it's not required, but it's on the checklist that makes clearance a little bit easier. But it is not required, but it just makes it easier.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nelwyn Madison, and Mr. Hamer gave quite a lengthy answer, but I really didn't think it was an answer. My district, I'm from District 3. The people that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of them, I'm president of my homeowners association, are very upset that we have no representation on this committee. And it's not that we don't trust y'all, but we don't trust y'all. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I tend to be a little blunt sometimes. I'm sorry about that. But there is a strong feeling in our district that basically that there's gonna be an attempt to probably squeeze out our supervisor by redrawing these lines. Now, that may be true, or it may be not true, but it's a perception, and you need to know what perception is. And the perception is this committee made of 2 people out of a group of 5 is just not trusted. I just don't know how else to say it. And I just think that either all the supervisors should be on the committee or none of them should be on it. I personally think that district lines ought to be done by statisticians and not politicians. Thank you.
Yes, I'm not on that committee, but I'm comfortable with the committee because I am with the majority. Me, John Bell, and D.I. We are the majority that's not on that board, and we are the ones going to prove whatever comes here.
But you should be on the board.
If not comfortable, you vote no, and you don't have a redistricting plan. You know, if 3 supervisors on that committee, I would be real concerned because they can prove whatever they want to prove because they'll be the majority. But right now, we that's not on that committee are the majority.
And Mr. President, I'd like to add one more thing to that, and Bruce may be able to help me with this. What's ultimately going to happen, and what will ultimately come into this boardroom, is not one map of new district lines. There's going to be several variations, several alternatives that will be looked at and commented on by each of these gentlemen to my right and probably people out there. So they're going to be up there. There'll be a line of maps most likely, and those won't even be set in stone. Those will be alterable, changeable. The committee isn't going to have anything to do with that. Again, it's just to shepherd the process. You will have representation. You do have representation because when all those variations are here, and I've seen cases where they talked about 6, 7, 8 different variations. I don't know what will ultimately happen here. Bruce probably knows better than I do, but that's what's going to be ultimately voted on in this boardroom by these 5 gentlemen. That's how the process is going to work. So that's where you have your representation all the way through the process.
But let me say this. It seems that we have a decision to make in terms of the qualifying deadline. If we change the qualifying deadline, the purpose for this committee, and the purpose for the committee was basically to do some good faith efforts because we were concerned about being able to get the information in time enough to make the redistricting happen before the election. If we have the qualifying deadline changed and we vote to go ahead and move in that direction, there's no really need for the committee itself. Supervisors and other interested candidates, and I'm sure are going to be talking to everybody they can to try to make sure that the lines are drawn in a direction in which is most pleasing. We have certain guidelines that the law requires to do, and I'm sure we'll adhere to those things, and we can make changes if we're ready now as a board to vote to move the qualifying deadline. Then we could actually have no need for that committee, but those people that are in that committee still have an interest in trying to stay on top of CMPDD to make sure they get their job done. And they are the statisticians. And not the politicians, but the politicians are going to have some input because we're charged with doing this. I mean, it's quite natural. We're the ones that have to vote on the actual line at some point in time when they get to us. And we need to be together, and we need to make sure we can do this process and keep these lines as close to where they are now as possible, but there's going to be some changes. This will be the 4th redistricting that I've been involved with. And in the process in the past, even when we did it in 2000, there was a committee put together. It's always been, the board has always put together a committee. It's easy for the board to operate by appointing a couple of supervisors to kind of shuffle the process. That's just the easiest way for us to function. Even though you have a committee, any supervisor has input on a continuous basis on every project that we do. When we talked about the committee, every supervisor had an opportunity to discuss at that point in time whether or not they felt we needed the committee, whether or not they felt they wanted to be on the committee. None of that, this conversation came up at that time. We had the conversation. And every action that we take as a board, all the supervisors, everything that we've done in this board, we've had continuous conversations for a lengthy period of time on most items. And of course, it seems that sometimes I don't know if everybody's not paying attention. But the vote taken to a special committee, as I recall, it was a 5-0 vote. These things, this is the way the boards operate. We establish smaller committees that we can charge with doing work, doing leg work, going out and bringing in the information so that the board can look at it as a board and vote on it. Trying to do it at a board meeting slows the process down. So if we decide we want to do it as a board, we do it at a board meeting, well, we have 2 a month. And that slows the process down. We have other business of the board that we also have to be charged with by law. I don't have a problem with whichever way this board decides to go. I know that the statutes require us to do in terms of redistricting. I know that we're going to get it done. I hope that we can go ahead and move quickly, decisively, and not have to hold up an election, because I know that special elections cost taxpayers. And that's a lot of money. Moving up from $40,000 to about $60,000 for an election. So what we like to do here, I believe that it would be, in all fairness, it would be good to move toward trying to get our qualifying deadline. But I think that would be something that I feel would be best for most people concerned, to move qualifying deadline. That gives us an opportunity to get new lines drawn and get them approved by the Justice Department.
Is that in form of a motion, Carl?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I got a motion from Carl. Eric, what would be the, would it need to enter into, do this injunction, where we enter with the other counties?
Authorize litigation to move the qualifying deadline from March 1 to June 1, and take all necessary legal action. And since this has been done before, it's going on right now in Hancock County. In fact, they're going to have a hearing on it on the 25th. The Butler Stowe Law Firm is working on that, and I would like to associate them to assist us.
I got a motion from Carl, second from John Bell.
Any estimated cost?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's a good question, because if somebody were to challenge this down the road, whether it's over the summer or after the election, move for a special election, and they are successful, they'd get their attorney's fees as well. So not only would you have to pay your own attorney's fees, you'd have to pay theirs as well. So that's an exposure or a risk that the board faces in trying to run under the current lines, and if a challenge comes along. But of course, there's going to be a litigation cost of prosecuting an action to get the deadlines met.
Got a motion from Carl, second from John Bell. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Okay. And you'll be entering that, Eric, to move our qualifying deadline from from March 1 to June.
Yes, sir.
Only the supervisor.
For only the supervisors, that's right.
What about the, all the other people that are affected, such as the constables, the justice court justices?
Their line ain't March.
Their deadline
They
is
got the
March.
same, they got the same issue as the supervisor.
The lines don't change.
Yes, they do change.
Um,
That's what this committee is looking at, is all of the line followings, not the supervisor
The
line.
justice court lines do not make any difference.
They do.
No, because
They did not make a difference in where the judge lived, the person lived and runs for it, you're correct about that. All right, what about constable?
They run the same with justice court.
So it doesn't make any difference where a constable lives?
it does make a difference.
It does make a difference.
Well, you govern by your district, aren't you? Even though the judge is, as constable, you govern.
The qualification process for judge states you have to be a qualified elector or the county, and whereas the constable states you have to be a qualified elector of the district.
Okay.
That's the difference.
All right, the other thing is the school board districts also affected. I mean, this is a big decision that we're making that involves more than just 5 members of the board of supervisors and 5 supervisor districts. The school board district, you have to live in your district. There'd be one, that there's a staggered out. But
If you got to walk,
one of the things.
you got to qualify that.
Can I just say, from a practical perspective, I think the exposure the county has on a one-man, one-vote challenge is with these 5 right here. If somebody wants to spend the time and money to do that on a constable race or a board of education race, school board race, I don't think that's a very likely risk. I mean, the one thing is this room can show us is that, I mean, 5 gentlemen sitting here are the ones that people are most interested in and how this next election is going to go.
I think, it's no problem to take a look and see if there are other elections that might be affected and add those into it for there. So it's not going to cost any more money to add in any affected district lines that might change, that may affect somebody else's election.
Yeah, but we're gonna be requiring 2 different groups of work. I mean, in other words, the analysis that's gotta be done for the school board district line, the justice court, and the constable. And we don't want the work to have to be done 2 different times. Once for the supervisor and then some other time for them.
I said there's no, I couldn't